Hello, Eric here from Adirondack Game Crafts, and today I'm going to show you how I make small wall terrain for tabletop war games. These are roughly 4 inches by 2 inches high on MDF bases, decorated to look pretty. You can use them for any game. They're generic and they're quite handy, and I'll show you how to do that. So grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's sit at the desk. So this was a project I started before I made this video. I was going to make 6 walls for myself, just to have, and I did one to just experiment, and I really liked the way it turned out. So I said, well, I'm going to make a video for the rest. I put this on cardboard because I didn't have anything other than that. You'll see later in the video I use MDF for the rest. These were made from foam core, 5 layers. I had made templates to cut out the holes. I really didn't care if the cutouts were smooth or not because I really wanted these to look like old abandoned walls that had been sitting around for centuries. I didn't want these to look nice and neat. Again, part of my experiment was I did rectangular stones on the sides, and on the original I just did random shapes, and the second one I did rectangular ones. I decided to go with the irregular shapes for the rest and not use cardboard. So this is still where I was deciding, I'm going to use cardboard, but I'm going to do it on one just to show you what I did, because I did treat the cardboard base a little differently than MDF. So I just cut out an oval shape for it because making sure that it's the right size. I did everything, kind of just eyeballed everything. I really didn't measure anything other than the templates I used to cut out things. So all I did here was just take some matte Mod Podge and just slapped it all over that base. My goal here was to create a just a protective layer of something that I could put more paint and flocking and other things on later on. So I just slapped as much on here as I could, covered the whole thing, and of course, because as Mod Podge is basically it's glue, while that was still tacky, I just stuck the wall on there. And again, like I said, I'm just eyeballing things. Lined it up, pushed it down, good to go. So here's the MDF. I cut them all out to the same size and then really just kind of roughed up the edges rather than leaving them nice and neat. I used this cheap rechargeable tool for that, which I think I picked up for like 25 bucks. And then I'm just going to prime them in black. So now to work on the actual walls, I just used a pencil to carve in the shapes of the stones. There are a number of different ways that you can do this. I've seen so many people do it in a variety of ways. For me, this was going to be the simplest way to achieve the result I was looking for. It's a bit time consuming doing this, especially this part where I'm just kind of like randomly drawing squiggly lines all over the place. When I get to the doing the walls with the rectangular shapes, it went a little bit faster. Now you could use sharper tools to create wider and deeper spaces between the stones to have to allow you to put a little bit of mortar in between there if that's something you want to do, depending upon how realistic you want these to actually look. I made sure that I carried over those lines down the sides to make sure I really got that 3D effect that these are stones, you know. And did the same here. Just made sure that I wrapped around all of those to make sure that, you know, this 3D look of these being stones is there. And as you can see, this went a lot faster doing these rectangular shapes on the sides. And I did this with all of the rest. Just quickly carved in these lines. That's the wonderful thing about this kind of foam. You can do this kind of stuff to it and it holds that shape. You don't have to worry about it. I purposely left the center of those cuts blank because that's just the look I was going for. Didn't have to. Now I'm just using a crumpled up ball of aluminum foil and pushing it in randomly around. That's going to create that bumpy pitted texture of old stone. And depending upon how much texture you want, it's how much pressure you're going to put onto the that aluminum foil. The harder you push, the more texture you're going to get. Look at that, already looking like stone. Wonderful. So all 4 of those are done and ready to go. We've got the 5th one on that cardboard drying. Now I didn't want to have 6 walls, you know, 6 boring looking walls. So I took some of these and grabbed a hobby knife and went to town just cutting them up. You can do this if you want to do this, go ahead and do it. You can do whatever you want to make these look interesting and fun. It all depends on how old of a look you're going for. So I started this one just by cutting this in half, and then I wanted to have that look like it was broken and both of these things were slanting to the sides. So I shaved off at an angle with my hobby knife along the bottoms. Just little bits here and there until I got the angle that I wanted. Now I've taken a pair of tweezers and a hobby knife and I'm just kind of detailing it, picking chunks out, cutting little bits off to really weather these things more. Now the cut down the center I did, I scuffed that up a lot because having a clean cut down the middle was not going to look natural. Going in with the aluminum foil again. This really didn't do much, but that was okay because later on I was able to cover up the ugliness of that cut with showing the 5 layers of the foam. I didn't really like that, but later on when you put on your flocking and other paints and everything like that, it covers a lot of that up. You can always fix mistakes or cover up your mistakes with flock. So once that was all set, I'm going to grab my hot glue gun and glue all of these pieces down to those bases. All of these tools that I have, they are all very inexpensive that I picked up at bargain box stores, bargain hobby stores, online. You know, I really don't see a need for me to spend a ton of money on stuff. And everything else was just stuff I had lying around. All of this foam core was stuff I salvaged from work. Here you can see I got another slanty wall. Some of them I did just leave normal looking. Now I'm going to take some Mod Podge mix in some paint. In this case, I'm using Mountain Stone from Reaper, and I'm going to cover all of these walls with this mixture. This is going to put on again, a protective layer, because these walls are going to get used a lot in games. So they're going to get touched, they're going to get banged around, and the Mod Podge is going to help by putting a kind of a hard layer on this to help protect the foam and everything else we're going to be doing. Mixing in the gray paint is, going to give it a little color. And you just slap that on all over, getting all the little nooks and crannies. Leave no space neglected. This is my satisfaction break. Once that Mod Podge is dried, that whole thing pulls right out of that cup. Ugh, that is so satisfying. Look at that. I love it. Yes. So I painted the base of the cardboard with Swamp Green from Reaper. And now I'm going to take Agrax Earth Shade and going to shade all of these wall pieces with that. A lot of people prefer to use black shading and washes, but I prefer brown. To my eye, it looks more natural. I don't know. And again, we're just going to cover all of it. Slap it on there, move it around to make sure that it hasn't pooled up anywhere excessively, so it's a nice even coat. And because this is an actual wash, you can just leave it. You don't have to dab off any extra. Now, I have these Army Painter dry brushes, and I have a couple of dry brushes that I made myself just by clipping off bristles. I'm going to take Filthy Cape from Army Painter, and we're going to dry brush. So tap on a little bit of paint onto our dry brush, wipe off almost all of it. A little test to see how much is on there. And we're just going to gently rub that brush all over the walls. This is going to put paint on the raised areas of the texture, whereas the wash put color into all of the low points of the texture. I made sure I did a little bit of extra swiping with that brush along all of the edges. And again, you just want to slap that on over the whole thing. Now, off camera, I took this gloss varnish from Vallejo that I have, and I wanted to try to create a stream, and I think I put on maybe 10 layers of it just on this one to try to make it look like water. I don't know. I don't have any UV resin or anything like that for this, so I just wanted to see how that would work out. Now here I have Swamp Green and Flat Earth. These two paints I mixed in water, did about a 50-50 paint to water mix on this, so kind of created a wash or a glaze. And what I'm going to do here is add color onto the walls, taking the green and going along tops and dragging it down from the top. Is going to make it look streaky, like moss and lichen just have permanently changed the color of the stones. This took a little bit of time, but for me it was fun just to look at it and say, okay, where do I want the green to be, where do I want it to go? And I think it looked best, just like I said, dragging it down from the top. I put a little bit on the actual tops of these two. The flat earth, I think, turned out to be a bad choice for color, but I went with it anyway. It was a little too yellow. You'll see here in a minute. It was too bright. I would have gone with a much darker brown. And I think next time, if I do anything like this again, I will go with a darker brown. But the flat earth is going to be too yellow. See, look, yeah, it's not good. But like I said before, flocking and decorating is your friend. We can cover up our mistakes. I wasn't sure, I thought maybe it was going to dry darker, which is why I just kind of went with it. It didn't dry darker. These are some skulls from HeroQuest that I took and I primed and threw on a brown wash and then a kind of bone white dry brush on them and glued one to each base, just here and there, just to add some visual interest. Now what I'm doing here is we're finally adding flocking. So I've got some little bit of watered down white paint that I'm going to put into areas where I think or I feel like moss will have accumulated. I've got this really dark green flock. All of this flocking and grass that I'm going to be putting on, they all came from a small little kit to help you get started doing this type of stuff. I picked up at a hobby shop, and I think it came with a dark green, a medium green, and a whole lot of light green, and it came with some grass, some yellow flock, and some tall yellow grass stuff. That's all it was. And there wasn't a lot in there. It was just a little starter kit. But that's what I do. I go to places and I'm like, oh, well, I might be able to use this someday. And if it's just a couple of bucks, I'll grab it, So here I've got yellow flowers and green and kind of browny grass tufts that I'm just sticking on here and there. These are Army Painter things. Again, I'm not being sponsored by them. It's just what I have. I picked those up and just stuck them on wherever I felt they would go. This here is this green kind of spongy material that I'm gluing down. This was hard to work with because it didn't want to stay stuck to the glue right away. But eventually it did, and it was fine, and it looked great. They looked like little bushes. Finally applying grass, slapping down that white glue, applying the grass. What I did with this grass here is I mixed in some of that medium green flock to darken the color because it was too bright for the aesthetic I was going for. I even put some on top too, because why not, right? I like to work neatly, which is why I put this stuff in a cup and use a spoon. Apply the flocking and grass while holding the piece over the cup. And then as soon as I'm done applying it, I knock off the excess, and whatever's going to stick is going to stick. Once these are done, I brought them out. Oh, no, I'm not done. That's right, I put moss on these. This is floral moss that I picked up at the dollar store. Again, I just happened to be at the dollar store, and I saw this bag of moss, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I might be able to use that for something. So I just grab it, throw it in my collection of stuff, and someday it'll come in useful. So I glued that all down, and then once I was done with that, I brought them outside and sprayed them down with a matte finish just to lock everything down, and here we go. Now, since I originally made these to be used to play with Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, I threw some Stormcloaks and Skeleton Archers in there. I think these walls came out pretty good. I like the way they look. And, mostly made with just materials I already had lying around. I didn't have to buy anything special to do these because it was all with materials and tools that I already had. And this was my first attempt at making terrain like this. I'd never made terrain before. And like I said, when I finished that first one, I was like, maybe I should make a video and tell people how I did it. I like them. I think they turned out great. So I hope you enjoyed that video on how I make these small pieces of terrain for my games. They were really fun to do. I really love doing this, and I hope you learned something. And if not, I hope you enjoyed watching. Remember to please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what you think I did right, what you think I did wrong. I am always willing to learn, and always willing to teach anything I may know that you may not. So this is what we're all here for, to help each other. Next time, we're going to be tackling the Imperial Legion for Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, and we'll be doing the regular soldiers. We're going to leave the mage and the captain out for now. We're just going to do the 3 pieces. So that's coming up next on Adirondack Gamecrafts. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.